Hey everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. So we're at that point where we're going to start designing our bowl, and this is where the creativity starts to flow and we get to have a little bit of fun here. For this first project though, we're going to keep it relatively simple. We're just going to do a simple bowl shape. We're not going to get too crazy with any curves or anything. But the process that we use is going to work for any shape that you want, whether it be a closed form or an open form bowl. So without further ado, let's get started on designing our bowl. Okay, so here's the basic layout of the bowl that we're going to start building. And it's a very simple shape, but I wanted to keep it simple just for this first project so that everybody can follow along and build one themselves and just get a feel for it. So the first thing that I do is I start with the center line. Okay. Now the center line here does not necessarily mean the center line of the paper. It is merely the center line of the bowl itself, or hollow form, or whatever it is that you're designing. So from that point, I establish a width, and I knew it was a bowl, and that I wanted it, say, around 10 inches or so. So coming from my center line, I measured off about 5 inches. Okay, and as far as the height goes, that, of course, is a personal choice, a preference of your own. But in this case, I seen that about a 2 and 2 3/4, 3 inch height or so was pleasing to me. So that's what I established. Now another thing to consider when establishing height is you need to think about the wood thickness that you're going to use. 3/4 stock is what most of us would use because it's readily available. So you could add up increments of 3/4 and then say 3/8 and a 3/8 for your top and bottom contrasting detail, and that may give you a number that you want to choose. Now if you have a thickness planer, certainly you can just design a bowl and then divide the body by however many pieces you want, and that will give you a thickness. So that's kind of up to you. But in this case, we're going with a 10 inch by about a 2 3/4 high bowl. So once those are established, I simply start from my top line and I draw this outside curve. Okay. Then I think about my wall thickness, which in this case is about 1/2 inch. So I draw my inside curve. Now from that point is when we actually start laying out our segments and figure out how big each segment needs to be. So let's get started on that. Okay, so now that we have the rough shape of our bowl laid out, what we need to start doing is figuring out how big each segment needs to be, also the thickness of the segments. So I've got these laid out as 3/4 inch segments for the main body of the bowl, as well as a 3/8 for a top and a bottom, and that, of course, that's going to be an accent color of a contrasting wood. Now, one thing you need to think about though is if you lay these out as 3/4 and you plan on using 3/4 stock, you're going to come up short, because after we cut and glue our segments up, like in this one, you can see they're not perfectly flat. They're still going to have to be flattened later on down the line. So you're going to lose a little bit of thickness on that. Now, depending on how close you got these to begin with, you will probably only lose about a 1/16 of an inch total. So over the course of this bowl, flattening all 5 layers, we're going to lose 5/16 of an inch. That may not be a big deal to you, but it's something to consider. So if you plan on using 3/4 inch stock, you may want to figure up each one of these as being, say, 11/16 or even 5/8 of an inch, and compensate for that. That way your bowl doesn't wind up being a lot shorter than what you originally designed it as.